Welcome to Chatsu-Nani. Hello everybody and welcome to another special episode of Chatsu-Nani. I'm Satsunami and joining me today is the man, the myth, the chibi indeed, Green Shield. Green Shield, welcome.
Nani? Hey, how's it going, everyone?
How you doing?
I'm good. It's been a little while since I've been on, so it's nice to be back in the Chatsu studio, i.e., my room.
Yeah, it's like whenever we have something anime related, we just like let you come on and then it's like that Simpsons episode where it's like, can I come too? And I just roll up the windows like, no.
Yeah, the anime beacon was lit, and so I came to answer the call.
In the spirit of what is it they say in Full Metal Alchemist? The laws of equivalent exchange. So basically, I had to clap my hands, and go down on the ground, draw the circle, and long story short, that's why Adam isn't on tonight. I'm sure we'll get him back. We'll get him back for the next episode, but
Yeah, we've scared him away from anime. They think that he's out, but we'll just pull him back in.
he'll just be floating in a void just now, like, where the hell am I?
We sent him to the Shadow Realm.
This isn't one of my romance animes. What's going on here? As you can tell by the title, today we're going to be taking things a lot more casual. We're going to be just having a real general chit chat about our anime experience and, basically talking about our journey towards that. Basically, like Shonen protagonists. Yeah, I am really excited for this one. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm very excited about this one. It's going to be really interesting. I've not had any of these kind of general chit chat kind of episodes. Mine are always very kind of focused, so I'm quite excited to just relax the belt a little bit and just not like throw the notes away. No notes needed, and just kind of have a general chit chat.
Did you apologise to your sensei before you came on this? It said you have to go all out just this once.
My ninja headband was revoked for this episode.
I was never a ninja to begin with, so thankfully. Although we will get into that. So to kind of begin with, we might as well talk about our journey into the world of anime because kind of flashing back, like for me personally, anime wasn't really as popular until, I don't know, the 90s were kind of, in Scotland at least, where anime started to kind of take off in popularity with shows like Pokemon, Digimon, Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon. But of course, was it the same for you, Green Shield?
Well, I've talked about this in, I think, the first ever Chatsu-Nani that we did about my kind of history of anime. But yeah, essentially, I grew up for a part of my life in Singapore in Southeast Asia. And so a lot of the time there was quite a large amount of anime on TV. And I did not know the difference at the time between that and other cartoons. So I'd be watching Ranma 1/2 and the Prince of Tennis and One Piece and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't see any difference between that and Samurai Jack or Teen Titans or the Justice League cartoon or anything like that. Like it all just kind of seemed the same to me. My understanding of like what anime wasn't until much later. I didn't know what constituted as anime till I was in my teens probably, because it was never discussed as being different. When I came back to the UK, I would mention these shows as being like, oh, everyone else watch this show, and they were like, the hell are you talking about? And so it was a kind of a big like, it was a wake up call for me almost, of like, whoa, well, what is this, like, what are these cartoons that I was watching that no one else did, and like what differentiate that from all these other ones that they did watch? And I sort of found out that these were Japanese cartoons and that people didn't watch those, that there was some like Pokemon, like Digimon, like Dragon Ball that did make its way over, but others, like as I said before, Prince of Tennis, Ranma 1/2, like those weren't distributed as well. I watched them dubbed in Singapore, so they would have had some English language releases somewhere. So maybe American, Canadian, or other English language speaking countries did also get those when they were younger. But I know that my friends in the UK did not. So I watched a fair amount of anime growing up. I watched a lot of One Piece and Pokemon and Digimon and those kinds of shows. And my brother was a big Dragon Ball fan, so I grew up watching a lot of Dragon Ball as well.
Because, I mean, the landscape here was quite similar in a way. Well, not similar, but in terms of certain shows, I totally see what you mean. Just picking on that point when you said about not being able to differentiate between what was an anime and what was a cartoon, because I was really in the same boat. Like, when I was younger, I just thought, oh, it's a cartoon. Yay. Let's watch the two muscle men fight each other. Or thinking back on it, it was a weird show to watch as a young child. It's like, oh boy, I can't wait to see this man, this muscled man, fight an alien that blows up planets.
Well, I mean, that's been the case for the longest time. I mean, think of like He-Man and
Yeah,
those kinds of
exactly.
shows
Yeah.
like back in the 80s. Like it was all the rage.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you would have shows like that were a bit more kid friendly, like Pokemon. I would say Digimon, but Digimon was more the kind of. I would still say it's kid friendly,
Digimon
obviously,
had an
but
edge to it.
it had a bigger edge, absolutely, than something like Pokemon, where it was like, oh no, Pikachu's gone. Oh no, we got Pikachu back. Like, see, watching Pokemon as an adult, it does not hit the same as
Hmm.
like watching it as a child, because you know that way when it's like, and especially for you and I, like going back to old animes to watch. Like, for
Hmm.
example, when we did the Chatsu-Nani on Beyblade, and you watch that and you're like, this is awful. Why did we watch this when we were younger? But obviously, when we watched it as children, it was like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. They've got spinning tops and there's a dragon. Woo! But you're watching it now like, this is garbage.
Yeah, there was something else going for Digimon as well, is that it was much more serialized, I felt, than Pokemon was. Like Pokemon, like he was on a journey and there was an end goal per se, but well, at times. But each episode was kind of independent from the other, that you didn't really need to have watched the previous episode to understand what was going on. Like you might be like, oh, where'd you get that Pokemon from? But ultimately, it didn't really matter. And I say like, I mean, there's some great episodes in that, like real classic ones. But that's also with a huge nostalgia glasses on that I see it that way. Like the episode where he got Charmander, the episode where it evolved into Charizard, the SS Anne episode. These were like iconic ones, but like going back, they don't quite work in the same way that they did when you were younger. I have watched a few episodes back that I watched when I was younger, and I've also, it's been years now, but I did watch some of the more recent seasons. Which, and again, I'm an adult now, so this might just be why, but it's unwatchable. Like for the recent seasons, I just found it very irritating. So I was like, okay, I cannot watch this. This is very annoying. But the whole idea of him not aging and it's sort of just restarting every time. So even when he's met a Pokemon before, if he sees it in this season for the first time, he's like, whoa, what's that? And check it on the Pokedex, and the Pokedex tells you, because theoretically this could be some kid's first time watching it, so they have to act like everyone in the audience is an idiot. And like I understand that the entire show is marketing for the games, and so they kind of have to play up on that. But it just doesn't quite work as a show when you're older. It's very much geared towards that younger demographic, like we were when we were that age. So yeah, some shows still work and some don't. Like you can rewatch Dragon Ball, but you can't really rewatch Pokemon anymore. I mean, some will, and some will still enjoy it, but I personally do not.
Because I think it was Craig from the Beer and Chill podcast that was talking to a good couple of months ago, and him and his wife, they like did a thing where they would go back and watch Saturday morning cartoons that you used to watch growing up, and one of them was Pokemon, because I think that's on, at least for the UK, it's on UK Netflix.
Yeah, it's on ours as well.
And for once, we've got something the same as Canada. Yes. But yeah, he watched it with his wife, and they said he only got a couple of episodes in, and he was like, I cannot watch this. It is basically unwatchable. And it's like, it is true. Like, as a kid, obviously, you kind of think less about certain plot holes and things. You're like, oh, yay, what are we going to do in the next episode? And obviously, in a show like Pokemon, they always have to reset the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
They have to always be like, okay, Ash gets his Pikachu back, we're going to get the badges and everything. And because it was kind of new and fresh at the time, you kind of thought, oh, yay, what's going to happen next? But if you kind of watch back the seasons, it kind of seems the same. And I have to admit, it wasn't until university, and just to jump forward a little briefly, that you and I met somebody who we used to go to university with, who absolutely loved the show when it came out and was still watching it. And you were like, eh? Like, I don't know, like, I was quite surprised they had all their fan theories and things like that. It's not like something like, Full Metal Alchemist or Attack on Titan, where it's like you don't know where the story's going to go. It's like, obviously, they have to follow the games and things, but yeah, it is still surprising, like, how popular these shows can be, even years later, to older fans.
To that note, I think for a lot of people who enjoy shows like Pokemon as adults, it's a comfort show. It's easy to
Oh,
watch.
absolutely.
There's very little conflict, and whatever conflict there is gets easily resolved. It's colorful. It's pleasant to watch. Like I remember this was a couple of years ago now, but my partner and I started watching from the beginning, the first season of Pokemon, and it was enjoyable, just as a turn your brain off, easy to watch kind of thing. As a actual show to like continue with and keep watching, it doesn't work. It's like I couldn't continue watching like the later seasons. I couldn't consistently watch Pokemon, but just as an occasional like turn your brain off kind of thing, it's fun. It's cute. There's cute monsters. Ash is a moron. That's kind of funny. Otherwise, I mean, this is quickly going to turn into a just talking about
What's wrong
Pokemon
with
episode,
Pokemon?
but like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with Pokemon and these other more childlike shows. Even like we did a whole episode on Beyblade for First and Last. It's stupid, but I could see that being someone's comfort show. Likewise with Digimon. These kinds of shows are easy to watch and they're fun. And for many people, that's Dragon Ball as well. Like Dragon Ball is a pretty easy to watch show. I mean, there's certainly like fighting, but there's a little bit more edge to it. But at the end of the day, it's still a simple show to watch, and so that's why people like it, and that's why people like a lot of anime.
Oh, absolutely. And I just want to point out, just on that though, in case anybody's listening and they might hear their favourite anime in here, we're just saying their own kind of opinions and experiences. If this is your favourite show, don't let our opinions take away your enjoyment of it. If you
Just
love it.
because we're right doesn't mean you have to be offended.
This is the reason why you haven't been on for so long. You're fueling the fire. Get shoot.
They're trying to censor me. Get in the comments.
But kind of going back to not so much Pokemon, but I was just thinking when you were like, oh, Pokemon's like the colourful show and all of that. And I was like, yeah, so was Digimon. And I'm like, wait a minute, no, it wasn't. Because you and I, going back to like, watching anime, well, kids' anime when we're older, like you and I watched, was it like season 3 of Digimon Tamers?
Yeah, which is personally my favorite.
Same.
I don't remember much of the other seasons, but I remember that one so well.
Yeah, and it's so good, like really well done. Because I know after that, I think, like, I'm not a Digimon aficionado or anything, but from what I read up, they kind of went a lot more kid friendly. Like, they had Digimon Frontiers, which was like kids turning into Digimon, and then
Hmm.
they had like ones where it was like all colourful. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everything has to be dark and gritty, like me saying, I like my coffee black in the morning, just like my soul. It doesn't have to be all gritty and void of joy.
I think you're right, and I just know, like, I do think that particularly that third season of Digimon, I think it was a lot darker in tone. I think it was a lot more mature with the storyline. And that it was still fundamentally a children's show, and it wasn't it's not like an inappropriate for children kind of show. It was very much for children. So what happened was, in my late teens, I'd kind of scroll through the channels, and I went through the kids ones, and I saw Digimon was on, Digimon Tamers, and I was like, oh, I haven't seen this in like a decade. I'll have a watch of it, and I put it on, and a rabbit suddenly digivolved and had Gatling gun arms. And I was like, well, this is awesome, because of the way it was syndicated on, like, because this was like a retro syndication, pretty much. It was an episode from a decade ago, pretty much, that was being syndicated for some reason onto Disney XD or something like that. And so they weren't playing them in order. There wasn't really any consistency to it. But I was like, I want to watch this again. So I sought the show online to watch again, and that was almost like my getting back into anime experience, where I was like, I found a website where I could watch it, and I watched all of the rest of Digimon on there, and I was like, well, I should watch more anime on here. So I watched things like Death Note. I got back into watching all of Dragon Ball. So I watched all of the original series of Dragon Ball, and then all of Dragon Ball Z. And I set myself the task in the summer prior to going to university that I would finish Dragon Ball Z before I got to university. And so I watched all of it, and it was good fun. I really enjoyed that, and so that's what kind of kickstarted me getting back into anime again. I don't know if you had a similar kind of experience. At what point you kind of got back into anime after all those years?
I had a weird experience, I have to say, because as we've established, I grew up watching Dragon Ball, Pokemon, Beyblade as well, to kind of contextualize it in the UK at least. And I'm pretty sure everywhere else, there was like this huge influx of like trends and things. So, everyone would be buying Pokemon stuff, they would be buying Digimon stuff, things like that. So you would always see in the playground like what the latest thing was, whether it's Beyblade or Dragon Ball and things, having like play fights, pretended to be the characters. And for a while after that, like after primary school, not that I distanced myself, but especially in terms of gaming, I wanted to kind of explore more mature kind of games and things because I was like growing up into my teens and the kind of awkward teens phase. And it was the same with anime. I was kind of distancing myself from anime. And then I remember watching bits and pieces, and I feel as if, like, later on, and we will touch on it, but it shows like Yu Gi Oh! Abridged, Dragon Ball Abridged, those kind of shows started to kind of get me interested in the shows again in a way that, I'd never really approached them. I feel as if the turning point for me, and this will sound like really, really, maybe pretentious, I don't know, but it was on BBC4 of all things. So I was flicking through the channels just randomly, and on BBC4 they were doing like I don't know if it was like a Japanese like cultural series at the time, and for some reason, like during that, they were also showing you a lot of Studio Ghibli films, and one of them was Spirited Away. And I didn't catch the beginning, but I kind of caught the middle and then the end, and I absolutely fell in love with it because watching things like Dragon Ball and Pokemon and all of these kind of shows, I mean, the animation looks okay, but it was nothing compared to what Studio Ghibli was producing. And I thought, this looks amazing, from the scenery, the vibrant colours, the vibrant setting and everything, how creative it was. Just all of a sudden I was like, oh my god, is this what anime can be? Kind of thing. And I decided to like jump back into it. I know the irony of me jumping back into it, and I was watching things like Death Note, but I watched Death Note and I thought, wow, for the time, because if you want to check out like more of our opinions on Death Note, then we've got an episode on it for Chatsu-Nani. But yeah, like at the time I really enjoyed it and I thought, wow, this is so cool. And it kind of opened that door into thinking of anime as just, another cartoon, into something a lot more mature, if that makes sense. Because it's like you saw a lot of things that you wouldn't normally see in standard Western cartoons. Like, obviously, it started to balance out a bit, but at the same time, it was like all of these different stories and things that they could follow, and it was just amazing. And that kind of got me into, trying a bit more anime, kind of experimenting and seeing what shows were popular at the time. And that really kind of leads us quite nicely onto, well, you and I meeting at university, of course, because I was in. This is me flashing back, so just imagine your own flashback music here. But I remember, yeah, being in third year of university, and you were in your first year. That's right,
Yes.
isn't it? And of course, just by chance, Green Shield and I met, and yeah, we've never gotten rid of each other since. Well, online, that is. Physically, we're a bit more further apart,
Yeah,
but
we distance ourselves by a few thousand kilometers in that regard. So you can get away from my recommendations to an extent.
yes, just turn off the PC. But yeah, Green Shield and I met, had an absolute blast throughout university. One day we will get into an episode probably where we recall our Domino's escapades. And by Domino's, I mean the pizza place. I don't mean like
We were really
the
into
game.
we were really into the game.
That time I became a Domino's champion. Yeah, I would watch that anime, but I digress. So, really, we watched a lot of things together. We watched loads of films, The Shawshank Redemption. That too. Just to explain for anyone who doesn't know, I'm terrible at watching certain films. And when I told Green Shield that I hadn't watched The Shawshank Redemption, he actually got it for my birthday. And in the same night, you were like, yes, we're watching this. Let's watch it. And we watched it. Great film, but anyway, I digress. So during that time, because I'm quite a shy person in real life, and I know the irony considering that I'm doing a podcast here, but it was kind of hard for me to open up about things I liked, whether it was gaming, whether it was anime, whether it was films, that kind of thing. And I felt by kind of third year, I started to open up a lot more. But you, Green Shield, you came in all guns blazing with your recommendations. I was like, oh, I don't know, should I say? And you're like, hey, check out this anime. Boom.
I'm very interested in people experiencing the same things I experience. It's certainly my love language is certainly giving.
Yeah, I would get like a knock on the door and then I would open it up and it would be like your DVDs of like whatever you were watching. And I was like, huh, whether it was Game of Thrones, Avatar, that kind of thing. But yeah, one of the things we actually bonded over as well was anime, really. Oh my god, that was an experience because we watched a lot in our third and fourth year. Or sorry, my third and fourth year and Green Shield's first and second year. We watched a shit ton of anime. It was an absolutely, honestly, it's one of my favourite memories of university. When people ask, what was your favourite memory? Was it, meeting new people? Was it getting your degree for the first time? It's like, nah. It was walking for an hour with one of my best friends to a small town nearby, picking up a crate of Coca-Cola and some snacks, and then walking back just to watch the latest episode of Hunter x Hunter. It was like an anime in its own right, wasn't it?
We had our own journey of exploration, our own shonen journey just to go get Coke and popcorn.
I was going to say, it's like, that episode of Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z where it's Krillin and Goku like training by carrying like the big crates. Only it's us with the big it's us with the big Coke and crates, like, yeah, we're going to be the best. But we really watched a lot because you and I were trying to figure out what anime was the first one we ever watched together. I honestly can't remember because it might have been, we were discussing it might be Sword Art Online, it might be Attack on Titan. I don't think it was Full Metal Alchemist. I think that came
No,
later.
Full Metal Alchemist and Gurren Lagann were both in my second year, which was your fourth year. You were talking about your sort of third year where I came in. I presume first and second year for you were just completely blank. That you like these didn't exist before I was introduced because that's the only logical explanation.
Yeah, they were retconned. Yeah.
It was when Satsunami spent his time in the Shadow Realm at that time. Yeah, so I think it was Attack on Titan. I don't think that we watched Sword Art Online until my second year. From my memory, I could be wrong, but from my memory, I'm pretty sure it was my second year that we started watching Sword Art Online. But yeah, Attack on Titan was definitely my first year. So I think that is probably what kicked off our watching together. But you introduced me to abridging, really. I'd only ever seen one other abridged series, and it was for Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it was not very good. And we're talking probably about 15 years ago, maybe less, maybe about just over 10 years ago. That's kind of my experience of a bridge series. And then you introduced me to Dragon Ball Z abridged. I just thought it was just the funniest thing, and I couldn't by that time there must be about like 30 to 40 episodes, if not more, of Dragon Ball Z abridged. And so I was like spent the entire like evening just powering through watching all these episodes to like catch up. And I definitely had an essay due at the time, so I was just procrastinating that by watching all these episodes.
Well, I'll tell you how bad it was, okay? I had made some bad life choices, okay? I was doing an essay the night before. Green Shield had gone out, just the party and everything. By the time Green Shield had come back from his night out, my door was like off the latch, so he came in to say, hey, how you doing? And then 2 seconds later, you were watching the Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged film, which is absolutely fantastic.
It's like an hour long.
Oh, it's so good though. And you were just howling in the background as I was writing this essay. It's like, oh, it's so good, but I have to finish this. Oh, yeah. The Abridged series, I have to admit, are probably what kept me coming back to anime because, my god, like the way that Team Four Star, I see exactly what you mean. Going back to what you said about the Avatar series, like I haven't seen that one personally, but a lot of abridged series are a definite hit or miss, and I hate to say that, but like Little Karibo and Team Four Star, even though their like earlier episodes were a lot more kind of meme and
Crude.
they were like very crude. I really didn't like that, but to be fair, they have acknowledged that as well. To be like, yeah, we could have done this better, but it was like I use this kind of ironically to be like, it was a different time, but it really was. Like internet humor's not what it is nowadays.
We're gonna say the exact same thing in 5-10 years.
Pretty much. Back in my day. But it's true though, it was a lot more, memes and references. And then of course you don't have to listen to me tell you that Team 4 Star and, the production value went through the roof. They just absolutely killed it in terms of storytelling, like character development. Same with Yu-Gi-Oh as well. Like, maybe not to the same extent because he took a bit of a hiatus, but Yu-Gi-Oh did wonders. And it's like you were watching that back and they were pointing out all the flaws and things in a kind of light-hearted manner, and you thought, you know what, I'm going to go back and rewatch these. And I think that was definitely what kind of hooked me back in.
Because you're right, they're making light of these shows, which for the most part you love, but it often will create a greater love for that property. For example, Dragon Ball, like I had not watched Dragon Ball since I did the whole big rewatch, but it made me want to rewatch Dragon Ball and get back into the world of Dragon Ball again because of the abridged series. And I ended up watching other abridged series after that. There was ones for Attack on Titan, which I think were also, the one we watched was also done by Team 4 Star, and they only ever did one episode, I think, which was very funny. We used to rewatch that like almost daily. And there was several for Hunter x Hunter, or it's Hunter x Hunter, depending on your preference. Yeah, that one, that was great. And do you remember the Attack on Titan one where it's like, pull a protractor out your pee hole and turn? You and I would quote that all the time, and that was definitely first year. I remember that was definitely first year we would do that.
The best one, and you still like scold me to this day. You still scold me like for referencing this, but it was a Hunter x Hunter. I can't remember who it was, but it was a Hunter x Hunter abridged parody where one of the characters was called Leorio. But the people the people who created the show like called him the Oreo, and I don't know why I find it so funny. I think it was the voice, maybe because he was always like, "I'm the Oreo," and people are like, okay. And it's like such a stupid, simple joke, but it hit like in the perfect spot. I was just like, this is hilarious. I'm going to recommend it to everyone. Yeah, I remember, like, see when Attack on Titan came out, oh my god, that took over, like, our campus. The only reason I say that is because there was actually a student who walked around campus wearing the Survey Corps cape. Do you remember that person?
I do remember that, and that was something we'll get into with regards to our time at university in anime. But there was a club. It wasn't specifically for anime. I think there might have actually been an anime club. I'm not sure, but there was one that was like a nerd club. That often there was a lot of crossover with the anime fans in this club. We both had a pretty unique experience of the few times we didn't go often.
Emphasis on we didn't go.
Yeah, we didn't feel like we fit into it very well because they had some similar interests as us. We thought like, well, we'll give this a shot. We had some friends who did partake in this club and did enjoy the club and had other friends in there. So we're like, okay, well, we'll give this a shot. And so we went, and we did not gel with the rest of them.
They were very intense, weren't they?
Yeah, and again, this wasn't just an anime club. This was everything, but it wasn't for us. But I did get some recommendations for stuff from there. So I mean, it served a purpose in some ways. Like there was some new shows that I checked out because of that anime club. Because I'm always looking for recommendations and whatnot.
You're a fan of Roman history, aren't you?
I do dibble dabble.
Is that what we call a Pyrrhic victory? It's like, I've got these recommendations, but at what cost?
Yeah, I crossed the Rubicon into the world of anime in that club, and unfortunately the die had been cast.
Was that the same club that you and I saw a grown 20-something-year-old run across university desks
because he wanted to put the Power Rangers song on? Yeah,
that was an experience, I have to say. Like, witnessing that firsthand of a grown man Naruto running over university lecture desks just to put on the Power Rangers theme. You're like, this is... It's like, I've had enough of this club. You all seem nice, but I've had enough. I'm okay. Yeah, I actually remember I was so close. You can't see it, but I'm pushing my fingers together. I was that close to actually joining the anime club, and I always wonder what would happen if, was a bit more confident and said to them, oh, when they join your club, because I remember, like, I was kind of to and fro and trying to think of a club to join. I was like, should I join this club? Should I join that club? I nearly joined the anime club, and then then some random guy decided to put on bunny ears. And I don't know why, but that put me off, I'm going to say. In fact, I think it was, the same bunny ears from, I actually cannot remember what game, that's terrible, but in Smash Bros.
It's from Majora's Mask.
Yeah, is it Majora's Mask?
Yeah.
I knew it was from Zelda, but couldn't remember if it was like, Ocarina or... But yeah, no, thank you. This is why I have you on, for all the Zelda references. But yeah, so my exposure to anime in university was pretty much through you, and it was you and I that were looking for new animes. And as I said, Attack on Titan absolutely was ripping through the campus, because we actually tried showing one of our flatmates. He did not like it at all. He just kept saying it's creepy as he took another drink, and it was like, yeah, I don't think that's helping. It's like, I feel as if drinking and watching these massive horrific Titan faces. I was like, yeah, this is just a recipe for nightmares. But that was terrifying at the time. Now you kind of just shrug it off and go, okay, it's a Titan, but
Yeah.
ugh.
It was certainly a lot different kind of anime than I had seen, and that's why Attack on Titan was such a shock for me. Attack on Titan did seem to have that wow factor. It had that shock factor. It was very interesting. It had a very striking animation style, and the aspect of you don't know who's going to die and anyone could die was so interesting. And they often die in very gruesome ways, which was so shocking, because I was not I'd seen anime that had the gory kind of arms cut off and blood and that kind of stuff, but I hadn't really seen someone be eaten before in anything. Maybe Jaws.
Yes, that anime.
Yeah, the anime Jaws, Shark Senpai. Yeah, so it was so, and the fact they were so human but not human, you were seeing them eat people. It was very, very alarming, very unsettling. That firmly held a place as one of my favorite animes, whilst in university for a long time. I don't know that it still holds a place as one of my favorite animes. I'm continuing to watch the most recent seasons, but I wouldn't say necessarily that it's still one of my favorite animes. I think that first season could go down as one of my favorite seasons of anime for sure, but I don't know if the entirety of the show would fall into that category for me. And from what I understand, we're not alone in our enjoyment of Attack on Titan at the time, and it was a starter anime for a lot of people. The fact that they had that, whoa, this is happening, and this is a cartoon. What's going on here? Maybe I should check out these other Japanese cartoons. And that kind of sparked a real kind of interest in anime. And it was around that time a lot of these animes came out. You had Attack on Titan, and you also had something we'll get into, but Sword Art Online. These are really strong starter animes for a new generation of anime fans that really kind of sparked interest in the medium. And even for those who watched the likes of Dragon Ball or Pokemon or these kinds of shows when they were younger but hadn't watched anime in a while, were shown Attack on Titan or Sword Art Online and started going, hey, I could start watching anime again. This is pretty cool. I like what they're doing. This isn't like what I was seeing when I was younger, but I like it.
I have to admit, I felt that way about, going back to one of the ones you mentioned earlier, Hunter x Hunter. Growing up, and technically I still have a soft spot for Dragon Ball Z, but growing up, Dragon Ball Z was very formulaic. It would be like, big bad guy, good guys have to train, good guys have a power-up that defeats bad guy, and that was it. And you knew that the good guys were always going to win. Even if one person died, they were always going to be brought back with the Dragon Balls, and there would always be a different excuse, and you thought, okay, same thing, so you really didn't set your expectations high. But with a show like Hunter x Hunter, which is the same genre, it's a shonen one, and I remember when we watched the very first episode, and you had a kind of smirk on, I remember, when we were watching it, because I was like, oh great, it's going to be another I'm going to be king of the pirates kind of deal here. It's Gon who's going to go and be a hunter and everything. It was not what I expected. It got dark fast, because I was like, oh great, who's this clown guy? And I was like, a couple episodes later, I'm like, you know what? I don't even know if I want to know who Hisoka is. I don't think I want to watch it.
Oh wow, this clown is one of the best anime antagonists I've ever seen.
It was until, until a certain point, and then you went, okay, I feel uncomfortable. But, that was, a very similar anime where both protagonists were kind of trying to better themselves and get stronger. But it was that idea of consequences that they threw in. And you know me, I love my consequences in shows like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. See, to begin with, I'm going to be honest here. I love Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I think it's one of the best animes I've ever watched in my life, but it is very, very difficult to get into at the beginning. It is like the first couple of episodes, I don't know why. I feel as if this is a universal experience because the first couple of episodes I was like, I really don't enjoy this. And I thought, do I want to continue? And thank God I did. And usually I wouldn't recommend people do that for shows because, you know, life's too short. If you don't enjoy something, just like say, nah, not interested. But genuinely, after the first couple of episodes, it gets so good. Although, am I right in saying you skipped a particular heart-wrenching episode? I'm going to call you out now for this.
Yeah, you are calling me out here. So my experience of watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood around the same time as you. I think we started watching it together after at a point, but I'd started watching it initially first, and I'd started watching it and I put it on and I fell asleep. And I woke up and I was like, "Oh, what episodes did I miss?" I was like, "Oh, I think I fell asleep around this point." And so I started on the episode after the very iconic one with the biological alchemist. I don't want to spoil anything for those who haven't watched it, but the episode with the biological alchemist and his daughter. And yeah, so it's like, yeah, that episode was really messed up, wasn't it? And I'm like, sure, I don't know what you're talking about. You talking about this guy with the top hat that spins very fast? And you're like, no, wait, no, this episode here. And I was like, I don't think I've seen that one. So I had to go back and watch, and I was like, oh my god.
I was like gut punched because, you know, I was watching it thinking again, oh, it's going to be a whodunit, oh, no feels here. There is many like tear worthy moments in this. I still cannot, well, again, no spoilers, but there's certain scenes where I cannot get through them, even today, with a dry eye. Like, I'll watch them and I'll be like, you know that meme where it's like the guy storming in really angrily and he's like, okay, today I'm gonna get through this without crying. And then, you know, It's a Terrible Day for Rain pops up. That episode you mentioned brings up the revenge plots and things. My God, I just sobbing uncontrollably. I'm just like, oh, it's so sad. And it's just, it's you'd be knocking my door like saying, Satsu, what's wrong? And I'm like, I'm having a moment. Just go away.
Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is definitely one of my favorite anime. I think it's one of the best starter animes for new anime watchers, but I will agree it is a slow start. It's very difficult to get into. My partner, she watched that first episode about 3 times before she finally got onto episode 2 because she just could not pay attention, couldn't get into it, didn't get it. And I kept like saying like, you have to get into this. You will absolutely love this. And then once we got started getting into it properly, she was hooked. She absolutely loved it. Back in 2019, we went to a anime con in Toronto called Anime North, and it was the first convention that either of us had been to, and the first time that either of us had ever cosplayed before. We obviously dressed up for Halloween, but never like a proper like nerdy dress up. So this was our first attempt cosplaying, and I went as Edward Elric and she went as Winry. And so that's like shows like how like key it was to us that our first ever cosplaying was Full Metal Alchemist characters. We absolutely love this show. I think it's outstanding. What's so great for those who haven't seen Full Alchemist, I can't recommend enough. One of the big issues in anime that I've expressed this in the past, and it's a known thing. A lot of people like to defend it from this, but that there's a lot of eye roll kind of moments where, like, usually towards a female character, there'll be some level of harassment of a sexual nature towards her that is kind of played for laughs. And it's a big issue with lots of anime, I feel. And and there's lots of other similar issues within anime towards women, which just does not exist for the most part in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. And funnily enough, it's because the mangaka who wrote Full Metal Alchemist initially is a woman. So it's funny enough, the female writer is not writing her female characters to be abused by the male characters. It's funny how it works that way. But yeah, it's refreshing. It seems like a story you can say to your friends, you should watch this, and they will watch it and they won't go, yikes, is this what this guy's into?
Yeah.
Because you almost have to, with a lot of anime recommendations, you have to preface it with, I know that there's a scene where our main character grabs her boobs and it's played for laughs, but you're gonna have to just get past that. It's not fun doing that. It's not fun trying to recommend something where you have to preface that there's some really bad shit in it that like you have to ignore, and it's a huge issue within the medium. And when there isn't that, you feel like you've hit like gold, finally found like something of really worth recommending. And that's why I cannot recommend Full Alchemist Brotherhood enough. Whereas another show I have mentioned before, Sword Art Online, which is another great starter anime in many ways, and not in others, is guilty of that. That there are sexual scenes that are played for laughs that are not okay. None of these scenes ever are going to be okay, but particularly it's just not fun to watch. It's not okay, and it's one of those shows where you do have to preface. And I know there's a very strong fan community that defends the show against any kind of criticism, but that's certainly one major criticism I have for the show, which I ultimately enjoy, but have, I feel, genuine critiques of. I don't know how you feel to that regard.
Sword Art Online angers me ever so, purely for the fact, and again, before I go on, because I know there might be the odd Sword Art Online fan here that's listening, see if you enjoy this show, perfectly fine, you do you, different strokes and all that. But for me, Sword Art Online, being, a video gamer myself, Sword Art Online is one of these, like, really cool, like, ideas where it's like, you know the stereotypical, if you die in the game, you die in real life. But in this, it's like, oh my god, it's this, like, virtual world, and they're trapped, how are they going to get out of it? I'm going to, brief spoiler here, 12 episodes later, they get out, and you're like, oh, well, what we're going to do for the rest of the season, because there's about 20 plus episodes of this. Oh, they go back into another VR world. Because, see, in all honesty, the first, I want to say, 3 episodes of this do fantastically. If I'm remembering my episodes correctly, where Kirito meets the guild and things go wrong without spoiling things, like those episodes where we talk about, basically a teenager who is trapped in this world, is trying to save his friends, just gets he gets put through this traumatic experience, so much so that, he shuts himself off from the rest of the world, and then it takes like a certain kind of person to, like coax him back into this new virtual society. Now, that would be good if that's the way they followed with the rest of the series, but the rest of it's basically just a harem anime. You might as well be watching that host club anime, minus the violence and that, but you know what I mean. He just builds up a harem of these clearly waifuized teenagers. And the reason I'm being so critical is I know what happens in the light novel, okay? If you want to look that up and see the controversy about how creepy and horrible the light novel is, where he describes in very lovely detail, and I'm using that as sarcastically as possible, detail about how they consummate their marriage, teenagers. And I'm like, I don't care if this is anime or if this is supposed to be the funniest thing ever. That's just flat out creepy. And it just gets worse, you get, for some reason, in like season 2, you've got scientists who are slug monsters with tentacles, and they capture the main female protagonist in this. In case anybody's wondering, oh, but Satsu, you've only watched, what, a handful of episodes? Oh no, I've watched the full thing. I've even watched the Alice arc, or Alicization.
Alicization and War of the Underworlds.
I have. I've watched it.
Yeah,
the War of
me
the
too.
Underworlds is horrible. There's literally a scene where one of the characters is tied up by tentacles and tortured. There are so many like instances like that, where it's like, oh look, boobs, ha ha ha, it's so funny. I know that's a trope in anime, and it's one I really don't like, but it just seems excessive. And we watched like the whole of SEO, like the first season. We thought, okay, maybe we'll, maybe things will get better. And then we watched Gun Gale Online together, and I mean, I will say I can't remember what it's called, but the Yuki arc. Did you ever watch that?
No, there was a big jump that I sort of skipped over for a while. That I came back into it for Alicization, but after Gun Gale, I stopped watching. There was a spin-off series that was set in the world of Gun Gale Online, I think.
That was okay. I did watch that, yeah.
I quite liked, with this like small girl that like ran really fast. She had a little pink minigun. That was pretty fun. I quite enjoyed that. And I've watched one of the movies as well, which was quite good. There are so many good moments in the show. It's pretty cookie cutter, the show. It's not breaking the mold in too many regards, but it doesn't need to. It's still fun, but it has legitimate issues with it, with its use of, rather, it just has scenes that you just think, this didn't need to be included. What did this add to the series? I will say that the first season of Sword Art Online, it had its moments where I was like, oh no, Jesus, I wish I hadn't done that. But for the most part, I think it was pretty spot on. And I will agree that it wraps up too quickly in the initial arc, the Aincrad arc. And I know, for the life of me, I can't remember the name, but there was I don't know if it was made into a show or just manga series, but there was a manga series created that kind of filled in the gaps for those big like time jumps that were happening in the first arc, that kind of fleshed out like what happened between, because they jump up to like floor like 79 over the course of, as you say, like 12 episodes, because they're trying to progress up through to the 100th floor, and if they beat the 100th floor then everyone gets to go free. And they would sort of jump, they were like, oh, we're now on floor 12, oh, we're now on floor 40,
100,
kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it wasn't 100, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, and apparently this manga fleshes out what was going on between those. But like a big criticism of Kirito is that this person who we never see doing really any grinding is like for some reason the most OP character. But you find out in this that like he is doing lots of grinding between those times, which allows his level to be at so high, essentially. So they've done some work to correct that. In some ways, it's almost like it's a bit like J.K. Rowling after the fact saying like, oh, actually this character was gay. Oh, actually this character could have been black. And it's like, well, it's kind of silly for you to now, after the fact, being like, oh, actually it's this, adding in, I'm actually a lot more liberal than you think I am because I'm retroactively saying this character is this. No, if you were, then you would have done it initially and faced any kind of backlash. Like, instead of hiding that a character could have been black or could have been gay, you could have said at the time, this character is black or this character is gay.
Or Kirito could have been well written, but there you go.
Yeah. And I'm diverging into a
SEO rant.
SAO/Harry Potter rant, but yeah, it's silly to retroactively correct things in that manner. If you felt like you were in some sort of crunch and you only now can fit that in, that's understandable to flesh out your content. But if you see like, oh, there was an issue with my story, I'm going to now add in something to make it better. It's for some people, and I do agree, it helps, but at the same time, you think, does this really increase the value of it, or are you retroactively adding things in that you didn't think of at the time? I don't know what your feelings are on that.
To be honest, it's a whole shoulda, coulda, woulda thing. It's like, if you're going to commit to a certain theme, go for it. Otherwise, why bother? Probably you could fix it retroactively, but by that time everyone's watched it. So the only people who are coming back for it are like the kind of die-hard fans. And although we've kind of listed like a lot of really good animes that we watched together, I remember there was one time I strayed off the path to watch what was described to me, can I just say, for the defense, Your Honour, a Attack on Titan clone that was supposed to be really good, and it wasn't as bad as SEO. I'll give it that. It wasn't as bad as, like, in fact, no, it probably was. You know what? I'm going to take the kid gloves off here because you got to rant about SEO, so I'm going to beat this to the ground. I don't know if there are actually fans of Black Bullet. I'm going to be honest. SEO, I can tell. If you say, "Oh, I don't like SEO," the fans come out in force to beat you down in virtual reality. But for Black Bullet is like, oh, what would happen if there were aliens attacking every so often? You've got a guy with a big gun and his basically a child that accompanies him that can see enemies or something like that and helps fight them. Every single child is a young girl, and you're just like, okay, this is a bit strange. And the fact that the young girl keeps professing her love to the main character, you're like, okay, this is getting uncomfortable. Guys, stop. And yeah, it is the worst. Do you know what really put me off it? This is like a speed run of how to turn me off an anime. At the very beginning, you see the protagonist as a child, and basically he's like cowering in fear, and this old man's holding a sword as he's fighting this monster. And I shit you not, this is a quote he says. Maybe it's a bad translation, but he says, "If you don't want to die, live." And I was like, yes, that's how you live, by not dying. Sorry, was that supposed to be like
Profound?
Yeah, profound, or this amazing kind of quote that people are going to put on t-shirts saying, "If you don't want to die, live." You know, you're like, this is just dumb. And I did watch it. The only saving grace is there was a cool guy with a top hat. He was the antagonist. I will say, he looked cool, but that was it. If you have to that didn't have the same kind of grace as SEO, but if you have to retroactively fix your content, it's just not that great, is it? I totally agree.
So I was just going to say, we were talking about Abridged earlier, and I think one of the best things that happened to Sword Art Online in a long time was SAO Abridged. And it's not a new series, but Sword Art Online Abridged by Something Witty Entertainment, I think it is very funny, and I highly recommend it. Even if you've not seen the series, it's pretty good at telling the story in their own way. And I would recommend that. And they're pretty slow at getting out their content because it's unpaid content essentially, so they have to kind of do it during their free time when they can. So there's often very long gaps between episodes, and so you'll very quickly catch up and be with us waiting for the next one. But it's very funny, and I would highly recommend that for anyone with a remote interest in Sword Art Online that doesn't really fancy going through some of the issues that we have talked about. There's an abridged version which will smooth over some of the cracks.
Yeah, that is actually a really good abridged series. I would recommend that. But see, before we move on to basically the university, well, post university arc, or as I like to call it, the betrayal arc, when you abandoned me. Was there any other animes that you went and watched on your own? Because I know for the majority of uni, we both watched like a lot of anime together. But was there any like particular ones you watched on your own or with others?
There were certainly some whilst I was still in university and you had graduated by this time that I was watching. Some that spring to mind are One Punch Man, which is fantastic. I love One Punch Man. It's a very short series. I've not heard any word about the third season of it, but I'm hoping it comes out soon because it's such a fun show. There's been others that I watched in university as well, like Parasite the Maxim, which is very weird, an alien that's in this guy's hand. Seven Deadly Sins is another big one that I watched in university, and outside. It continued on past my university time. And there were several, but one highlight during our time that we've not mentioned, I just want to quickly bring up, and it's one of my favorite anime, quite possibly my favorite anime, is Gurren Lagann by Studio Trigger, who are just a wonderful animation studio. Highly recommend the majority of their library. It's just fantastic. And Gurren Lagann also has some issues with it. There is some things that you might want to sort of preface when recommending it to people, but it inspired such a wave of emotion from me that I can't help but say, yes, this is my favorite, because I don't think very many other anime or really anything inspired the emotional response from me that Gurren Lagann did. So I cannot speak more highly of this show. And I know you are also a fan. I don't know if you're necessarily to the same extent a fan of it, but I know you also enjoyed it. We watched it together in my second year or fourth year of university.
I think that is one of the things about anime that people don't really touch on when they talk about anime, because it's one thing to go away and watch an anime on your own, but it's another thing when you find a community for that anime, if that makes
Definitely.
sense.
Yeah, I completely agree.
You know, it's like if I went away and watched Hunter x Hunter, I would have enjoyed it, sure, but it's like, would I have enjoyed it to the same extent if I didn't watch it with you? Even with SAO and things, although, you know, we've obviously complained about it and everything, it's still that kind of shared experience, you know? It's like going through it together, suffering together. I'm kidding for legal reasons, that's a joke. Attack on Titan and things, Full Metal Alchemist, you know, all of the Gurren Lagann as well, but all of these shows they were just kind of made better, you know, by watching it with someone and having someone to bounce off of and be like, oh, what's going to happen next? Because I have to admit, even though it wasn't that great, we watched Fate Stay Night Zero together. That was okay.
The experience of watching it together, I felt, was better than the show
Watching it,
itself.
yeah, because it's one of those animes that, like, it's because it's a prequel. I think that's why we were so lost.
We're gonna have the fans of so many different anime on our back because of this episode.
Well, see, if you wanna lodge like a grievance, you can catch us at anchor.fm/Chatsu-Nani. Please, whatever you do, do not share the link to the episode and get everybody to listen to the episode.
Yeah, if you really hate it, tell your friends to listen so they can hate it too.
Yes, exactly. That shared experience.
Shared experience of hating us.
Speedrun cancelling myself aside.
Just to jump in there, I do agree definitely about the shared experience, and I think this isn't just an anime thing. I think this speaks to a wider situation with our society and culture at the moment with regards to the content available. Because everything really now is online, and even when it's not, there's such an abundance of content and shows that it's quite hard to find a lot of them are so good that it's quite hard to find a show that you and a friend or colleague both enjoy, that you can have that water cooler moment of talking about it and conversing over it. And so when you both are able to say, let's both watch this either together or have watched it separately and you just want to talk about it and we'll watch it again, it feels special. It feels really special. And anime was that for us, that we didn't just watch anime together. There was a bunch of other shows and movies that we watched together. Game of of Thrones, Avatar: Last Airbender, Secret Life of Walter Mitty. There was all these kind of greats of our time that we watched together, and I mean, you have that shared experience. And I joke about the Secret Life of Walter Mitty, but it was actually the first time that Satsunami and I stayed up late and watched something together, and we joked about it. We created characters in the movie because the movie itself was largely forgettable, but we would create kind of characters, put on voices for characters, create like pretend they were saying lines and that kind of stuff, and it made it a more enjoyable experience for us. That even something when you're not having as much fun with the content, you can create that yourself. And I'm getting into a much wider topic now than anime. I'm just getting into just friendship as a as a
Well,
topic.
friendship and anime, yeah.
Well, I mean, anime and friendship are like peas and carrots, aren't they? They're intertwined. Power of friendship is often the is what gets the characters through it. I'm now just getting into sort of reminisce nostalgia time, which is, I suppose, the point of this episode. It was a really sort of lovely experience. The time that where we got to watch anime together and discuss anime together in person. So that was a very strong memory of university for me. I didn't always find the academic side of university as fun. I got through it, but not as fun. But it was certainly the experiences. If you're young listening to this and you're debating, do I want to go to college or university? Will I make friends? You will. You'll make friends. You'll have a good time. School side of things isn't the only side of university. It's the social experiences you create. And if you both have a shared love of anime, then it can make a friendship last a bit longer. So I think if you find that shared interest with someone at university, it can make the difference between chatting to them for a year and then never again, or in my case with Satsunami, chatting for the last 8 years now.
I mean, it's that experience of sitting up at 2 a.m. eating pizza while watching the latest episode of Attack on Titan, or yeah, those are the memories though, because it's like, don't get me wrong, there were loads of memories I have of university, but those were some of by far my favourite memories of course, just chilling out with you, having a good time, watching anime, riffing on it. Of course, other media as well. We didn't just watch anime, as you mentioned, but yeah, like those moments where we just like chilled out, and after, the stress of university and things, it was good to kind of relax and unwind. Because I have to admit, and this will get something like a weird side tangent, but I always remember there was one time in university where, because of the, long story short, because of the living conditions of my room at the time, I got very sick and I had to kind of quarantine myself before quarantining was cool. Hashtag pre 2020 quarantine gang here. So it's like I was off uni lectures, I was like held up in my room, just like I can't get out. It passed. It wasn't like anything too serious, but I was still like really under the weather. And I always remember watching a show called, I think I was looking through to see what kind of shows I could watch, anime wise, because I think at the time you were busy with like university work as well, and I didn't want you getting sick off of me. And I ended up finding a show called Chunibyo. Have you ever heard of that show?
Chunibyo?
Yeah, it's not as kind of mainstream, and I don't want to be like a hipster being like, it's not as mainstream, you wouldn't understand. It's because I saw a clip of it on YouTube, and I was like, this looks quite neat, and it's a cute anime. It's basically, I don't know if Chunibyo is like a real term in Japanese, or it's just made up for the show, but essentially what it is, do you remember when we were kids, and you know how you get like that one kid who kind of role plays as a character, or just like is heavy into like the role play elements, is like, oh, I'm this and that. What kids do, they create their own OCs and things like that. It's basically a show about like a boy who's trying to, he used to be like that when he was younger, and then he moves to a new school, like I think he moves to high school, and he tries to like lock that side of himself away, but then he meets a girl who is still kind of in that deluded phase. It's just going back, like this is going really far back into the episodes, but just what you said about having a comfort show, it was like one of these shows that it wasn't about like life or death scales, it wasn't about the world ending, it wasn't about, it was just this like really comfy show. And I think that is like something a lot of anime fans kind of feel in anime. It's like a comfort show, it's like a world that they can escape in. And obviously that concept isn't just limited to anime, but I feel as if like the right anime at the right time really kind of helps in that regard. And going from that to much like insert popular boy band at the time here, Split, you and I both went our, I say separate ways, even though we've been talking for, as you said, 8+ years. Yeah, did you keep up with, because I know you have kept up with anime, but did you keep up with anime the same after we both parted?
I definitely did not watch it to the same extent for a long period of time. I think within the last couple of years, I've gotten more into I'll have like waves of like watching like a bunch of different anime, watching lots of anime at the same time. I'll usually have my standard anime that I've watched consistently. Like I say this, I got back into watching One Piece probably about a year ago, maybe a bit longer, after a self-imposed hiatus due to lack of interest in the show. So I got back into that and I've watched that consistently for the last couple of years. And then there's been other shows that I've kind of jumped into. I've watched some anime YouTubers who talk about anime. Not a whole lot of them, but just one that's particularly funny usually. Shout out to Giguk or Gig UK. I can't remember. I think it's Giguk, isn't it? He has some great videos on anime, and he'll often do lots of episodes where he's recommending shows. And that has kind of become my new way of finding out about anime. And I found out about so many different anime as a result of this. Dr. Stone, which I know you have your opinions on. That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. Both these shows I absolutely love. And then there's been lots of others throughout the last few years. But one most recently, and I really, really recommend this to anyone listening if you've not already watched it, and especially to you, Satsunami, is Ranking of Kings, which is such a lovely anime. It is a small boy who is deaf and mute for the most part. He makes noises, but he can't speak.
Is that the one where it's like the shadowy creature?
There is a little shadow creature friend who looks like a bit like an unknown from Pokemon, who is his friend, and he also acts as almost like his translator as well. And it's set like the world is a medieval world, like medieval fantasy world. The animation and general basic story seems like a children's show, like almost like a children's book or like a very early children's cartoon with like the mean stepmother and wanting her son to be the next king kind of thing. And then it starts to sort of get into it, and you're realizing it's much more complex than that. It's a lot more deep than that. The animation is actually quite, saying again, complex. That the storyline gets very dark at times, very gruesome in some ways, and you're seeing it's very childlike animation with characters who have just been stabbed, and you're like, oh my goodness, I did not see that coming. Everything else to this point, it seemed so childlike, and then all of a sudden this character has just been stabbed and is bleeding out. And the young protagonist is just the sweetest character, and you really root for him. So again, cannot recommend highly enough this show. It is very cute, very fun, very entertaining, and it's still running. I think the latest episode just came out either yesterday or today, so I'll be watching that probably later tonight. And yeah, definitely check that out. That's my recommendation of the day. I really enjoy love world building kind of shows. Like That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, that's very fun to me. That has a lot of eye roll moments, but I'm able to ignore those because the general show is pretty fun. And Dr. Stone is another one that's a lot of like I say world building, I don't mean like it displays its own world in a very rich kind of way. It's more so like they're creating their own town and starting a civilization from scratch pretty much. And in Dr. Stone's case, he's sort of trying to accelerate technology to a certain point in this sort of medieval, this sort of like Stone Age world, pretty much. And so there's lots of very fun shows at the moment. I've watched a heap of anime. I've watched a lot of different anime since we left, as I said, in different kind of waves. But those are probably my main ones at the moment. There's others that I'm less inclined to recommend, but I still watch, like Overlord, which I think you've watched a little bit of, and Rising of the Shield Hero, which has some pretty controversial scenes in it. So those are a few of mine. I don't want to bore the listeners too much with more recommendations from me and more of what I've just been listening to and watching. But do you have any of your own that you'd say that you've been watching or would recommend?
No, none at all. And on that note, thank you all. No, I'm looking. Yeah, maybe a few. I was in very much the same boat as you, I think. I really didn't watch much anime after university. I don't know, like, you know how it is, like, life gets in the way and you just don't have enough time for certain things like you used to, like anime watching and things like that. But then I slowly started to get into it with things like, as you said, One Punch Man, absolutely fantastic. Mob Psycho as well. One of my friends introduced me to that.
Love Mob
Fantastic.
Psycho.
So good. I did watch Seven Deadly Sins with my partner, but yeah, mixed feelings. I'll just cliff notes here. Mixed feelings.
You have your major one.
Yes, my latest obsession, JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, which, honestly, if you want to hear my full opinions, I've got 6 episodes with the amazing Blowfish Man TV, who is also Canadian, so yeah, go check those out on the Chatsu-Nani channel. But I was recommended JoJo by a friend for absolutely ages. They kept saying, watch it, it's good. I was like, yeah, I'll get round to it. You know how it is, Greenfield. It took ages to get round to it, and then, of course, 2020 hit. I decided to watch it, and I absolutely love it. I watched the first 3 seasons, wasn't a big fan of the third one, so I took a break, and then I was kicking myself because part 4 was so good. At the time of this episode, still waiting for the rest of Stone Ocean to drop, but yeah, absolutely loved it. Of course, My Hero Academia, that's another great one.
Of course, I forgot about My Hero Academia. I've enjoyed My Hero Academia to such an extent. I've seen 3 of the movies at the cinema.
Yeah, I've seen 2 out of 3. I think I haven't seen the latest one, but I've heard good things about it.
What's quite funny is the last film pre-lockdown that I watched at the cinema was the second My Hero Academia movie with my partner Taylor, who did not watch My Hero Academia, so like that was like her first kind of introduction to it. And then one of the first movies following cinemas reopening post lockdown, well, of that lockdown, was the third one. So it felt quite appropriate that we started the pandemic with My Hero Academia, then ended it. Well, I said ended. It's still ongoing for any future listeners listening to this. It's still running, the pandemic currently.
And yeah, for any past listeners who might be using a time machine, please buy toilet rolls. You won't regret it. Nah, jokes aside, I don't know. Like, My Hero Academia was just one of those, like, it was just one of those shows that throughout the first episode, it actually hooked me right away. And I can't say that about a lot of animes, because there's a lot of animes where, like, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, I'll watch it and I'll be like, I don't know, and then eventually I have to push myself to watch the rest of it. But for My Hero Academia, it just gripped me right away. And don't get me wrong, it's kind of dipping and some bits of
It has its lulls, for sure.
Yeah, which is the standard for any kind of series like that. And I know it's probably going to be one of those series that goes on for ages. Not One Piece standards.
Supposedly not, actually. I think,
really,
if I'm remembering correctly, there's not that much left of the series.
Oh wow,
it's going to end not like super soon, but like there's not that much left of it.
That's actually surprising. I thought it was going to go on for like ages and ages. Yeah,
Mm.
well, maybe not One Piece standards or Naruto or anything like that, but
Naruto, that's another one I watched post university. I decided I would watch all of Naruto and Naruto Shippuden finally, so I just binged through that in the course of like 4 months.
I tried. I really tried, but I just could not get into it. Not in a bad way. And again, no disrespect to
like
Naruto
ninjas.
fans. Well, I don't like ninjas for one, but it's just same with One Piece. I tried getting into One Piece as well, but it's like Dragon Ball Z. I don't know if I would be into Dragon Ball nowadays. I tried getting into it, and I think it's just the length of it. And I get it, I get that there's like guides out there that say, watch this particular arc, don't watch this arc, and you're going to have a good time or a bad time, but I don't know. It just seems like a lot of effort just to be like, oh yes, I finally watched it. There's just some series that I feel as if it's better if you're growing up with it rather than, jumping into it in the deep end.
Yeah, I watched it at the ripe old age of 24. Yeah, 23 or 24, I can't remember which. I really enjoyed it. As I said, I looked up a list of all the filler episodes so I could skip past those, because I know a lot of Naruto fans enjoy several filler, and some of the filler have their own arcs. So there was a pretty substantial one to skip. But I think that ended up being 112 episodes that I skipped, which sped up the process pretty substantially. But I mean, there was still hundreds of episodes to watch, so it took quite a while. Like I'd rewatched all of Dragon Ball Z before, so like I thought like, oh, I'm pretty capable of like getting through this, but it was a challenge far greater than that for Naruto. It was very akin to when I tried to catch up with One Piece in my early or rather late teenage years.
Yeah, that's a chunky series. I mean, I'm just trying to think of what other anime. I mean, there was before I go into my controversial takes, there was one I watched recently called The Disastrous Life of Saiki K. I actually really enjoyed that. It's basically One Punch Man, but instead of One Punch Man, it's psychics. Okay, it's more like a slice of life, but with a world ending psychic. I actually really, really enjoyed that. And actually, there was an anime, see, going off of like that trope of the main protagonist is like stronger than everyone else. I actually saw a really good Chinese one, which I don't know if that technically is anime, but
I'll count it.
it's called The Daily Life of the Immortal King, which it's not like, obviously, it's not the greatest anime I've ever seen, but I actually really enjoyed it. I don't know, there's something like quite, not nice, that's the wrong word, but you know, it's something relaxing when, see, the main character's like super OP, but it's kind of played as a joke into the story. Like, there's some anime going back to SEO where it's like the main character's so OP and they can't be touched and anything. It's like, okay, that makes it boring. But when they mix an overpowered protagonist as like the core joke, whether it's One Punch Man, Mob Psycho, which I know they're made by the same guy, Daily Life of the Immortal King, so good. Daily Life of Psyche K, yeah, they're honestly great. But do you want to hear my controversial takes?
I'm always prepared to hear your controversial takes. That's
Okay, so get ready to speedrun me getting cancelled by the anime community. I could not get into Doctor Stone, I'm going to be honest, and I've talked to you about this, and I think it's just the reason that everybody in the show annoyed me, and maybe it's just I need to watch more of it. Maybe I just need to Full Metal Alchemist myself through it, but it was just a chore to get through. I just sat there thinking, you know, you had like the very smug Doctor Stone himself. I don't even know if that's his name, but I'm just going to call him Doctor Stone. Yeah, that's the one. You know, you've got him who's like smug all the time. You've got the sidekick who just screams all the time. He screams everything. I don't know. I really couldn't get into it. Another one I couldn't get into, and this isn't because the show's bad, but Demon Slayer.
Don't call it mid. Whatever you do, don't call Demon Slayer mid.
Oh no, it's worse than that. No, I'm kidding. I'm only kidding. I'm genuinely kidding. Please don't lynch me. Demon Slayer, I started watching it and I really couldn't get into it. And I think, and I was saying this to you before we recorded, but I think this is more a kind of state of mind thing. For example, I tried watching Akira like a couple of months ago and I really just couldn't get into it. Now, that's not to say, like me saying, oh, I couldn't get into it. That's not like me saying, oh, it's terrible, never watch it. It just means at that point, I don't know. I just really couldn't get into, you know, watching that particular film. And same with Demon Slayer. Like, I watched a couple of episodes up until I think when he's training in the forest and he meets the other characters. And I was just like, it's okay. And I don't know. I don't know if it's like because I'm getting older and I'm just like, You know that way where it's like because I'm not watching it with other people, as it were. Like I'm not watching it like at the same time with you and discussing it, or
yeah. I wonder if you would enjoy it more if you had watched it with me like we did in university for other shows.
probably.
I didn't mention Demon Slayer when I was talking about great sort of shows I've watched in recent years, but I love Demon Slayer. I think Demon Slayer is fantastic. But just quickly, when you brought up the shouting from Dr. Stone, it actually made me think of another show I watched after university, Black Clover. I don't know if you ever encountered that show.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. So that one's very good. It has a lot of similarities, I think, with Naruto, but it's not as good as Naruto. It has great moments. It does have good moments, but it's not nearly as interesting as Naruto. And the characters are pretty one note. There's a very weird character in it that like loves his sister, his like child sister, like not in a like sexual way, but like is obsessed with her, which is very strange, which might be endearing in some ways, but it's not.
I have to admit, kind of going off on that point, although they're both teenagers, even though I do love The Disastrous Life of Psyche, there is a similar situation, only it's a bit worse, where it's like someone's brother fawning over their sister and everything, and it's like at first you think, oh, they're just being overprotective, and then they keep talking, and you're like, oh, why did you have to throw this in?
We didn't even get into that part of SAO.
Oh god, yeah. But next episode, next episode, yeah.
Eventually, we'll have an SAO episode where we talk more in depth about that. If you did enjoy our rants on that, then you can look forward to that. If you didn't, then too bad. You're getting it anyway.
It's what the fans demand, damn it. But I mean, see, at the end of the day, though, anime is just so diverse. Actually, there's a couple of shows we didn't actually mention, or rather, movies, as it were, because you and I watched a good couple of anime films in uni.
We did.
That, of course, being Ghibli's classics like Castle in the Sky. I had to be very careful there because I know the other title, which would offend a lot of Spanish people, or rather, a lot of Spanish-speaking people. I think a lot of Spanish speakers did like do a double take and go, "The what in the sky?"
What does it mean in Spanish?
What, Laputa?
Yeah.
I don't even know if I can say it on the podcast. It's like a very rude word.
This is where your editing skills come into handy of your bleeps.
It basically means like a very promiscuous individual,
I see.
or akin to like a worse version of the F word. Yeah, it's not nice, but again, I don't think they thought of that when they were making the film title. I think it was just meant to be like a funny name. They weren't thinking, what's our swear words in Spanish for the day?
To my knowledge, Laputa Castle in the Sky, and I may have mixed this up with something else, but I'm pretty sure Laputa Castle in the Sky is not Ghibli. That it was created before Ghibli as a studio was actually created. A lot of the same team worked on it, but Ghibli was not founded at that point. I could be wrong. I might be thinking of a different movie that came out prior to that, but if I'm correct, that is the case, that Laputa was pre-Ghibli.
But speaking of non-Ghibli films, before we go on, there was Grave of the Fireflies we watched, which was, that's a tough watch, that one. Great film, absolutely fantastic, but Grave of the Fireflies is just...
Fun fact for you, when Grave of the Fireflies came out, so did My Neighbor Totoro, and it was put on as a double bill. So you watched both films one after the other.
Why? Why?
For those unaware, My Neighbor Totoro is like a toddler movie, essentially. It's very cute, very sweet, very little actual story going on, but it's just kind of a bunch of events that happen with mystical characters. And it's very, very cute, very sweet. I know Satsunami doesn't like it very much, but that's his problem. Whereas Grave of the Fireflies is a dramatic piece set in Japan during World War II with two orphans trying to survive and are like starving.
Same thing, really.
So they don't quite gel together for the same kinds of people who may be going in to watch that. One like could be nominated for an Oscar for its like deep portrayal of children in a war-torn country, and the other is like a cutesy children's movie. Both fantastic, but in their own ways, but not at all similar.
No, absolutely not. That is actually horrifying. Moving on to a lighter... Well, I say lighter, and then I'm going to bring up Wolf Children, because that has some harrowing moments in it.
It does indeed. I think one of the characters is called Haru, in fact. The movie Wolf Children is just gorgeous. The animation is beautiful. The music is stunning.
Am I right in saying it's the same studio that created The Girl Who Leapt Through Time?
To my knowledge, that is correct, yes. I want to say it's Madhouse, but I don't know that for sure. I'd have to look that up. But Studio Ghibli always gets the attention outside of Japan, rather, in the Western world when it comes to anime movies. But there is some absolutely fantastic stuff from other studios, such as Madhouse, and there are other anime studios that make fantastic Japanese anime movies, but I cannot think of them for the life of me. Another honorable mention would be Your Name, which is, I'm not just talking anime movie, but it is one of my partner's favorite movies of all time. I showed her that film and she fell in love. We frequently listen to the soundtrack and will multiple times a year watch the movie because we love it that much. And any kind of push to have us go to a trip to Japan is usually prefaced with, "Oh, we can go see this location from Your Name," and that kind of pushes it to being more of a possibility once travel over there is possible.
Honestly, there is just such a plethora of anime content out there, because I think a lot of people are put off by the kind of, the surface level anime reputation, as it were, because us growing up in the kind of mid-2000s, there was a lot of, how to put this delicately, the cringe compilations, people running around saying kawaii all the time and things like that. At the end of the day, there's just so, as you said, there's so many films out there that really showcase you know, the beauty of the animation, and just really makes you want to explore this medium further. What I will say is not all of them hit. Like, you know, directly. Like, obviously, you and I have like just talked for the last hour or so about animes that are good or not. For example, if you like something like My Hero Academia, then chances are you're not going to like Ghost in the Shell. Or if you like Psychopaths, then you're not going to enjoy probably JoJo. So it's kind of trying to fit in with what you appreciate as a final anime to rag on. But did you see Tokyo Sinks, or Japan Sinks? Sorry.
I've never seen Japan Sinks. I've heard a lot about it. I've seen scenes from it, but I've never watched the show.
Speed review from Chatsu-Nani. I did not enjoy it. It was not good. I want my money back. I didn't pay for it. It was on Netflix, but I still want my money back. It wasn't great, I have to say. I really tried getting into it. There's some bits that are really well done, but I feel as if after a certain point, it just goes downhill. And again, that's a story for another time. All the Japan Sinks stands out there will be like, oh no, off with his head. But like, yeah, I don't know. Kind of just as a closing point, would you say that this has been a worthwhile journey for you in terms of like exploring anime?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I think it's one of my favorite mediums of entertainment. I love anime. I'm very open to its criticisms, and I will often argue about a lot of the issues that exist within anime and anime culture. But at the end of the day, I enjoy the medium. I've always enjoyed animation, and I think that Japanese animation is some of the best that there is. The art style of it, like a more 2D style, appeals to me a lot more than 3D animation. So whilst I have huge praise for the work of Pixar and wider Disney and DreamWorks and Illumination, I think these studios all create very well crafted animated movies, and likewise for television shows as well, cartoons. I do find that I enjoy the anime more than these well crafted 3D animated Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, Illumination films. With the odd exception, there's something like How to Train Your Dragon. I think is gorgeous, and Pixar's Luca or something like that has such beautiful animation, and Kanto has such beautiful animation. But generally, I prefer the 2D style, and I think that's more enjoyable for me. I don't know where you sit for that.
So what you're saying is for the next episode we should do a DreamWorks retrospective.
I would love to do that. That would actually be very fun.
Okay, we're adding it to the list next time. No, I do agree. At the end of the day, this is a thing that I do think a lot of animes obviously do in a very like cheesy, ironic way, where they're like the power of friendship. But it does feel though as if a lot of anime, in terms of like anime culture as a whole, is trying to find your community. Because you could go into anime and just watch, you know, particular ones that you want to watch, whether it be Attack on Titan, whether it be Fate Stay Night, you know, whatever you're into. And whether or not you enjoy them or you don't enjoy them, that is like entirely up to you. Because I have seen a lot of fans, probably younger fans, but I wouldn't put it past older fans to act the same, that get very defensive because that's a show they've grown up with. Maybe it's a show that they really like. Like, for example, Sword Art Online, obviously it's not our cup of tea, but it doesn't mean that like someone else can't get enjoyment out of it. I mean, personally, obviously we can't see that from our end because we watched it together. We've forged our own experience, and that's perfectly okay. Whether you enjoy a show, whether you hate a show, don't let anybody, and yeah, this is a sappy PSA of the episode, but yeah, don't let anybody, say if they hate an anime or don't like an anime film, anime series, whatever, that is yours. Like, the enjoyment is yours to have and to kind of foster throughout your own anime journey. And if anyone listening out there has their own anime journey they would like to share with us, feel free to send it in to either Twitter, we've got the website as well for Chatsunami, Instagram as well. If you want to share your opinions and talk about your journey, please feel free, because we would love to hear what you have to say.
As a final point as well, anime isn't one thing. I've said this many times, that you can't necessarily say, oh, I don't like anime, because there isn't just Dragon Ball. There isn't just this one genre. It's like saying, I don't like books. Like, you have so many different varieties. There are people who say they don't like books. That's fair enough, and there will be people who there will be no anime that they can get into, and there will be stumbling blocks for them. They may not enjoy the art style of any kind of anime, which is possible. They may not enjoy the cultural references, but for the most part, I don't think really plays out because there will be anime set in so many different locations, time periods. The stories will be so different, that the genres that are being told are so different. You can get horror anime, you can get children-friendly anime, you can get murder thriller anime, action, adventure. There's so many different explorations and different stories being told just through the medium, because that's what it is. Anime is a medium. Anime isn't a genre in itself. It is the medium through which genres and stories are told. That allows you, more so than lots of other types of mediums, because cartoons, Western cartoons, typically, there is a differentiation. There is some, especially more recently, there is now more shows that explore cartoons as a medium as opposed to a genre. And you have your children's cartoons, then you have your more adult focused cartoons, like which at one point would have been Simpsons or Family Guy or shows like that. And now you have other shows which are cartoons but catered towards adults. For example, a more recent example would be The Boys, released an anthology series that is animated on Amazon, and that is very adult orientated. And there's now dozens of shows like that. There's a Dungeons and Dragons Critical Role Vox Machina animated show, which is very adult orientated, all animated. So animation is now getting into that, but for the longest time, you did not have that variety in cartoons like you did in anime. And so that's one of the things that was so refreshing at the time. And I think now, and partly through inspiration from anime, I think that these more recent adult oriented cartoons have been inspired by anime and what anime can do for an older audience. We're able to get into that. So unless animation itself is the biggest stumbling block for you, I think you will find that there is an anime that you will enjoy.
On that note, thank you all so much for listening. I hope, Adam, you've enjoyed our PowerPoint for why you should come back on the show for more episodes of the Chatsu-Nani.
If anything, just to get us to shut up so we're not talking for 2 hours.
Worth it. Don't worry. In editing, it'll be 5 minutes.
Oh, okay, yeah. It'll just be solely our rant on SEO. That's all it'll be.
See, to be fair, this episode is about 5 minutes in the making minutes, so we're fine. Don't worry. And yeah, saying that note, I think that's the perfect place to...
Over 5,000.
Over 5,000. Yeah, perfect place to stop, I think. But honestly, Green Shield, thank you so much for coming on and yeah, reminiscing through memory lane, as it were.
No, thank you so much for having me.
I'd finish the episode and say, yeah, if you want to follow us, blah, blah, blah. But we do have a lot more episodes on anime, of course, that being the Chatsu-Nani series, which you can find on the website as well. But if you want to check out more episodes just in general, whether it be the JoJo retrospectives or Chatsu-Nani episodes together, the game reviews we've done, check us out on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and really all good podcast apps. So just look for the Red Panda under the name Chatsunami, and yeah, we will see you there. But until then, thank you all so much for listening. As always, stay safe, stay awesome, stay hydrated, and enjoy your anime.